Hey, I hope everybody's doing well. Today I am talking with Belle Verdiglione from Camera Queens. She is coming at you all the way from Australia,
That's
right?
correct.
And today we're going to just be talking about kind of business. Gosh, this doesn't even really need to be about photography business. It's just business and life and embracing who you are and what it is that you want to be doing and what it's like to finally find that thing and what it's like when it clicks. And because you were just telling me a story, Belle, about going to the post office on Mondays and about how you just feel like the phrase you used was, I'm excited because I get to do this, not because I
Mhm.
have to do this. I'm excited because I get to do this. And I think that there are so few of us who feel that way about life and about what we're doing with our lives. And yeah, how did you find that? How did you
Oh,
end up there?
gosh, that's such a great question, and one that would probably need a couple of hours to get
Right?
to. But let's just break that down a bit. I guess there's been a couple of really poignant things that have happened in my life that have been, for want of a better word, quite traumatic. And so it was really going into that and really going into and looking at the shame and the guilt and the pain that I was feeling from some of those moments, and then really transmuting that and going, you know what, like, all of me is welcome, all of me is me. I grew up in an Italian Catholic family, and it was very much you do things because you have to, you do things because it's the right thing to do, or people expect that from you.
Yes.
And so I had a lot of that people pleaser and to do the things because otherwise, what will people think? And so, really, like, I think it was really when I had my own children, and especially when I had my daughter, that I was like, oh, okay, I don't think that things that I've gone through were okay. And so I really need to look at that now, because I don't want to just, like, I think sometimes when you have children, like, they can be really good mirrors for us, right? To
Oh,
see
yeah.
kind of things that we haven't actually dealt with, or things that our parents used to say, or care providers. And you're like, it comes out of your mouth without thinking about it. I was like, this
Yeah.
is subconscious here.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't something that I'm really aware of. So, what else am I not aware of? And so I went down this really amazing deep dive into the subconscious. And yeah, it was actually quite amazing. And then just started looking at all the things that I hadn't really dealt with. That was like, pack that down, sweep that under the rug.
Right.
And then, yeah, it just was coming out. And I was like, oh, when you start going to those sort of places about yourself, then you realize what you need from life. And I was like, oh, I don't want that anymore, and I do want that. So I kept going on this little self-discovery journey until I was like, okay, I'm going to quit my 9 to 5 job. It's not lighting me up anymore. I'm going to
Yep.
go all in on photography. I love it so much, and teaching and mentoring. And I just kept following I kept following that.
Yep.
Oh, that feels good. I'm going to keep going, and not in a destructive way, and being really
Yeah.
aware of my numbing out, whether it be
Yeah.
alcohol or Netflix, or I was a crazy online shopper. So every time I would be emotional, like, some people eat, some people do drugs, some people gamble and all of that sort of thing. But my
Yep.
vice was either alcohol or online shopping, which is
Yeah.
not great for your health and not great for your bank balance. But yeah, so when I became aware of those sort of things, I just kept going, okay, what do I really want from life? And I
Yeah.
ain't getting any younger. So it's like now or never. And I was like, okay, cool. I love people. I love community. I love serving. I love helping people. What would I have loved when I was starting out my photography business? And
Yeah.
how can I bring that into my community to help women and non-binary folk? And that's how
Yeah.
sort of Camera Queens was created, and yeah, birthed.
That's fantastic, man. There's so much to unpack there. Starting with something you said about when you have a kid, like it just surfaces things that you didn't realize were there. The sins of the father have popped in. That phrase has popped into my head so many times since we had our first kid. And I don't mean it in the true sense of sins, but habits, almost
Ah,
phrases, these things that, like, just like you said, I find myself just like my knee jerk reactions are the same that my dad used to do, or my mom used to, mostly my dad used to do. And there are things that I didn't care for. And let me put this out there. He's never going to listen to this, but I'll put this out there anyway. I had a fantastic father. He was fantastic. He still is. He's great. He's got a temper issue, and it's something that I find that I have to deal with. And it's this idea of breaking these cycles and being the person in the generational line. These are things that I never even thought of before having kids, but it really is this small thread of all this great stuff that's running from generation to generation. There's this black thread that runs through all of it, that I have to be the one that says enough's enough. I'm going to cut this so that my
100%.
kids don't do it too. And I just, man, that really resonates. And then the other thing about, I don't know if it's just getting to a certain age, or maybe this is midlife crisis for me or whatever, but this idea of like finally saying, I know me, I know what I will and won't change. I know what means a lot to me now and what doesn't, and enough is enough. And now we live in a camper and travel full time because enough was enough, because we came to the very similar realizations of what do I want? Because I don't have unlimited time like I had when I was younger, where it was like, oh yeah, that's way far away. Guess what? It's really not anymore. I'm 42. And every
I'm
time I
older
see
than
the
you.
news, yeah, and you know how it is. I don't, maybe you do this, I do this. Every time I see the news and some famous person has died, I do the quick math of like, oh man, that's only 16 more years. Or, oh, that's only 30 more years. Or, and it's every single time I see that, I'm
Yeah,
like, oh man,
really.
that's not that far. So it really is. It's this spot where we're like, enough is enough. I need to do what it is that lights me up. I need to do what it is that is really important. And for me, it's been where we already had a business that does that. Like my business already does that. I love that. But on the personal life side, I wasn't balancing that well enough, because it's really tough when you love what you do to be like, oh yeah, I know I need to go hang out with my family more, but I also really love this thing.
Yeah.
And this has been this experience of just forcing us to get things back in balance, and to make sure that I'm present. And because of all the things that you said, like these are the things that really do light me up, and kind of reshaping your life to fit your priorities. I don't know if that makes
A
sense, but
100%. And when you are on your deathbed, are you going to be thinking about work? You're going to be thinking about all the
yes, yeah,
amazing memories and adventures that you've had with your family, and how you spent as much quality time with them as possible and watched them grow and nurtured them. So
yeah,
you're right about finding that balance. And I guess on the other side, it's like, okay, we do need to make a living. We need to be nourished monetary wise. So do we want to sell our soul in that aspect, or can we also have that really nourishing work as well
yeah,
as the life, and
yeah.
marry that together, which I think is really beautiful. I'm really jealous actually of what you guys are doing.
It's glamorous. It sounds glamorous, I should say. A lot of times we're in a really tiny apartment that we shake for 6 hours every few days to move from one place to another. And we're like, what did we break on this last travel day? And what's that smell? Is usually that's really what it's like. Is, oh man, it's really pretty out there, but what's that smell? Like it's, yeah, it's
Oh,
fun.
love it. Are
I
you
should,
taking
yeah.
photos?
We're taking a lot of photos. So yeah, it's been a great experience so far. I say so far, we've been doing this now a year and a half. So there's no end in sight. So we're headed west now. We're in Tennessee right now, and headed southwest. So we'll end up in Utah by December. So
Wow.
yeah, it's exciting. But anyway, I want to talk about you, because all of these things brought up a ton of questions for me. How do you take all of this stuff that we just talked about, and what does that look like in a coaching sense for a photographer? Talk me through, what does coaching with you look like? What types of things do you do? And what's the end goal? Maybe that's what it is.
Okay, so the end goal is to Impact as many photographers as I can in a positive way, hopefully,
Yeah,
so
right.
they have the skill set and the tools to build a sustainable and profitable business. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We're in business. I know a lot of photographers will do shoots for free because we love it so much. But at the end of the day, we need to pay our bills. We need to put food on the table. And so I guess, but it's also, I think for me, and I think this is what Camera Queens does a little bit differently to, and maybe other coaching programs out there, is we look at that identity aspect and that real self-discovery and what do our thoughts tell us, and looking at the mindset, because honestly, in business, 95% has been mindset for me, and
Yeah,
the struggles of I'm not good enough. I'm going to compare my work and myself and how I'm showing up to every other person and make that mean something about myself, that my work isn't great or this or that, or I'm not making enough money or whatever it is that we tell
yeah,
ourselves. And I just think that, yes, we need to have the tools to know how to run a business. We need to obviously know how to take amazing photos, but then we
right.
also need to have that extra look at ourselves and how we operate. And I think what I used to do is look at other people and go, oh, they're just like creating all these offers and they're shooting every day and blah, 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 blah. Oh, I don't want to do that. I only want to do one shoot a week.
Yeah,
So therefore, I'm doing it wrong. And I had to actually go, no, how's my energy levels? What are my other competing priorities? I have two beautiful children who I want to spend as much quality time with. I have other fun hobbies and a partner and all sorts of things that I want to do as well. Shooting 5 nights a week is not for me.
yeah,
And yeah, and so it was like, okay, this is what feels really good for me. And just really understanding like my idea of success. Like, what is it? What do I want? And how's that going to look for me? And do I want to be charging less, but then shooting 5 times a week? Or do I want to actually have that quality time with my family, maybe shoot once a week, but charge a premium?
yep,
So
yep,
that's, I guess, where I had meandered through to get to where I am. And a lot of the time on my coaching calls, I say, if I've got questions, I go back to them and go, what do you want? What feels good for you? What's
yeah,
your intuition say? What's your gut instinct say? Because I think sometimes, especially as humans who identify as women, we have, what's the word? We've given our power away so much, or we've
yes,
been told by the media or culture or high school teachers or whatever that we're too much, we're too loud, or we're too quiet, or we're not this, or we're not that. And so we're looking at someone else to go, oh no, you've got permission for that. And so a lot of the time, I'm literally just giving these amazing humans permission to be themselves, to say what they want, to do business their way, to just go with what their heart's telling them.
yeah, yeah. It's, man, again, so many things.
It's so good. I love this.
The idea that, so that permission thing, that's a word, that's a concept that has come up in our business and in my life 1,000 times. Um, and just this idea that, like, sometimes you do need that outside voice to say, hey, but why don't you just go do that? And you're like, oh, I didn't think that was possible. But even that one mention, that one little nudge can be enough to push you over and say,
Mm.
oh yeah, I do have, like you said, I do have permission to do that. I can do that. And something that I think, unfortunately, to make this about me again, I'm not trying to, I promise. But this whole experience of being on the road and like working from the road and teaching the kids on the road, all of that, one of the things that comes up for me often is this idea that I want my kids to know that there is another option out there. Like, they don't have to do it by the book, that there are no rules. There are no
Yes.
rules. We are all making this up as we go. And even if my kids end up doing the normal thing. They go and they live in the suburbs with their 2.5 kids and a dog and a white picket fence and the two full 9 to 5 jobs. Even if they do that, this experience is showing them that there are other options. And then if
Mm,
they choose that, it's because they want that, not because they feel like they have to have that or that they're
yes.
supposed to do that. And I feel like you have something very similar going on with your coaching where you're saying, like, okay, cool, Here are all the things that you could do. And maybe if you don't even recognize them, look, let's turn on the flashlight and look into some of these darker corners and say, look, here's a thing that you could do. Or maybe you don't have to do that. You could do this thing over here instead. Like just showing them their options and then saying,
Mhm.
what feels right to you? If it's the normal thing, okay, you're just going to do what everybody else is doing. Okay, that's great. If that's what you're choosing to do because it's what you
100%.
want to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
having that awareness as well and going,
yes,
no, this is actually, I've thought about it, I've sat with it, and this is my path, or this is the shoot that I
yes.
want to do, or this is how much I want to charge, or whatever it is.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, I really love that. That's that wording as well. We don't have to, or we shouldn't,
Yep.
all of those sort of things.
I
So
love
important.
that. And what's cool about what you're doing then is okay, so you go through this process of who are you? What do you want out of your business? What
Mhm.
makes your business work in the context of the rest of the life that you want? Not even necessarily the rest of your life, but the rest of the life that you want. How can we use this business as the power source essentially to power the rest of this life that you want, right? So you go through this process and you figure that out. And then on top of that, you now have kind of the business and the experience sense to say, okay, this is what your path could look like then. Okay, if
Mhm.
that's what you want, if these are your priorities, then this business model is right for you. And now let's tackle that. So it's funnily enough, it's something that we talk about a lot when we're teaching in-person sales. We're saying, hey, we have to get this foundational stuff first, but then we can build on top of that. But without that foundation, it doesn't make any sense to just start throwing things out there because we don't have a reason for those things. Or, okay, so for people listening who listen to me for some reason, we talk about planning meetings and how we're going to ask all these questions so that we can say, okay, we're going to meet at this time, at this place, on these days. We have reasons for what we're like the session that we're planning and all of that, right? Because we've asked questions and we've gotten feedback from them and we're like, okay, here's what we're going to do, right? And I'm going to say all of this stuff that I need to say anyway. Where are we going to do the session? What time? What are you going to wear? All of this stuff. But now I have reasons behind it. It's not just throwing stuff out there. So many of us do. I don't know, wear all matching clothes and we'll meet at the beach. No, I have reasons for this. Getting back to my point, did I tell you it was 7 a.m.? It's probably what's happening here while I'm meandering
Like, I
around
need
topics.
coffee.
Right? Yeah, exactly. But what you're doing though is you're figuring out what is it, where do we want to go? Where are we going? What's the to use the phrase from earlier, what's the end goal? What does
Mm,
success look like for you? Okay, great. Now that we have that, we can then put on the success glasses and say, okay, now everything that we do needs to
mm,
fit within, like we filter everything through that lens and say,
yeah.
okay, it doesn't make sense for you to, maybe with what they want, it doesn't make sense for you to do in-person sales. Let's just ignore that. Maybe it makes sense for you to run this kind of business model. Great, let's do that. And I like to think of it as our North Star. So what is my North Star? So that as I drift off and I say, oh, like, oh, there's something shiny that looks really cool over here. Nope. What's my North Star? Am I facing the right way? Nope, I'm not.
Yeah.
It's right over there. I need to turn and I need to go back. Man, I love this. I love what you're doing over there. And I love that you consider a phrase that came to mind was the whole person. You consider the whole person instead of just the business. Because I feel like as a business coach, you feel like, oh, I'm a business coach. No, you're not really though.
Yeah. But I
Okay.
think with photographers, I think sometimes in my experience, photographers come to me and I'll look at their socials and there's not one photo of them. Like a lot of people are really scared. They're quite comfortable being behind the camera. And
Yep.
I'm like, no, you need to get in front of the camera because we need to be attracting our amazing clients. How are they going to trust you? How are they going to feel safe with you? How are they going to book you if they don't know who they're booking? Right. And they're like, but it's my photos, it's this, it's that. It's like, no, they actually need to know all of you. What are you excited about? Who's in your life? Like, you don't need to obviously show, what you ate for breakfast or anything like that.
Right.
But if there are other really important things in your life, you might be a vegan and
Yep.
that is really important to you. It's like, if you're putting that out there, you're going to attract the
Yes.
same like-minded people who value veganism and sustainability or animal
Yeah.
activism or whatever it is. It's show all parts of you. You're not this like one-dimensional person. Yes, you're a photographer and everyone wants to connect with your pretty pictures, so to speak.
Right.
They want to connect to you. Show them your heart. Show them, tell
Yes.
stories. So many times, like, there's like a beautiful family photo and there might be a quote or just something that's quite generic. And I'm like, talk about you. Tell a story about why you got into photography. Why is it so important for other families to connect to have their own family portrait
Right.
taken? Like, tell stories, like get them, like weave your essence into your Instagram feed or your
Yeah.
socials or whatever it is. And they're like, what? I can't, no one wants to know about me. No one wants to hear from me. And then I'll be like, okay, this is a trick that if anyone's listening, go and have a look at your insights and see what the most liked or most commented photos are. And I bet they are
Yep.
the personal photo. And so I used to do this like when I was going through my, I need to show up. And it was amazing because even now I'm like, it's like personal stuff is what people respond to because that's the
Yeah.
connection. That's you being human. And of course, they love your photos and all of that, but they want to buy from you. And the other thing that I also say is you've got to show up because you need to know what the client is feeling, like
Mm.
how, like and have your own photo session. So many of my students don't have their own photo session. I'm like, you got to get in front of the camera because you got to know
Yeah.
like how scared you are or the nerves coming up, how awkward it is, right? If someone doesn't talk you through and make you feel comfortable in your body and like how to
Yep.
pose and then even afterwards waiting for your photos, like that moment of, oh gosh, are they going to look
Are they ready
okay?
yet?
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
are we
Texting
there
your
yet?
photographer on the drive home. Are they ready yet? Yeah.
And so many people, I remember even me, I would get a message from my clients going, I can't wait to see them all yet. And I'm like, like again, don't they know that all the stuff we have to do? And now I'm like, when I get shoots, I'm like, I just want a photo. I need to see
Right.
it.
I love that aspect of not only, hey, you need to do this because it's good for your brand, but really it does. It makes you a truly better photographer. It makes you a better business owner because you are going through and experiencing the quote unquote pain points
Mm.
that your client does. And so it helps you understand exactly how they're feeling at any given time. And I would even say that anytime you start feeling yourself say those things, don't they know all the things? Maybe it's time for you to do another session then. Maybe it's time for you to relight that and be like, oh, yeah, that's right. This is what that feels like. Here's where they are right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love this.
It's great to have content to educate as well, because without those questions or without the things of, my client put a filter on. Okay, where is it that I have educated them that we don't use filters or
Right.
that it's not okay? Or if you didn't read that part, we still need to go back to them and go, actually, it's
Yeah.
not
Hey,
okay.
can we not do that? Yeah. Yeah.
And things
Yeah.
like that, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
Like we know because it's our craft, but
Yep.
yeah, it's important to educate.
This is great. I really want to ask you a question that is completely off the wall, but something you said earlier made me want to ask it. So I'm going to ask it anyway. As the father of a very strong willed daughter, what's the word I'm looking for? How do I build up that? Let me put it this way. My daughter is exactly who I want her to be when she grows up. I need her to be that. I need her to be that woman who says, I'm not doing it your way just because you said I should do it that way. That girl who says, or that woman who says, I don't need you to help me do this. I'm good enough to do this on my own. How do I reinforce that in her while still getting her to brush her teeth at night?
I do. I know
You said
exactly what you
something
mean.
earlier about how you help photographers who identify as women stop asking for permission and embrace this part of themselves that says, I don't need your permission. I don't need outside forces. I don't need other people to tell me who I am and what I can do. That's my daughter right now. Right? How do I embrace that? How do I push that part forward while also saying, but today, as a 9-year old, you really do have to listen to me.
Yeah, it's that fine line of setting boundaries and making sure that they're safe. But at the same time, the more you say don't do something or do something, the more the opposite will happen. So for me, I have a strong-willed daughter as well. And I'm like, thank you, universe. Yeah, that came around. And I talk to her like she has autonomy over herself and that she is capable. And I say, okay, so if you don't want to brush your teeth, this is potentially what will happen.
Yep.
And let's have a look at someone that hasn't brushed their teeth and
Right.
Google it. Oh my
Right.
goodness. Like
Right.
you'll probably traumatize her.
Yeah, she'll be like, we have to brush again. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe just giving options and saying what the outcome in your experience or in Aunt Sue's experience or in neighbor Joe down the road, this is what's happened. So
Yeah.
what do you think about that? And maybe always just referring back and going, what do you think would be the best option? Like for you, is that really taking care of yourself or things like that? I've always, even when my kids were little, it was always consent was so important. Do you mind if I pull up your shirt right now? Things like that. And even when we'd go for medical appointments, I was really amazed at how many doctors wouldn't actually speak to my child and ask permission before doing things. And I'm like, and as the parent, I was like, actually, do you mind asking my child if it's okay? And things like that. And I think the more that we make them feel like they have ownership over their actions and then explain the different outcomes, perhaps. And it's my job as a mum to keep you safe. If you don't hold my hand and a truck comes next to me, you might actually, like, this potentially could happen. And sometimes, obviously, it has to be age appropriate as well, but my children are tweens, so they're getting to that real in between a teenager and a child. It's quite an interesting age. And I actually talk to them about how I'm feeling. I've heard some bad news about maybe a teenager that something's happened. I'll actually talk to them about it. We talk about a lot of subjects, which may be things like drugs and just like how to avoid just bankruptcy and things like that, like things like if it's actually happening, we actually talk about it. And I'll be like, oh, what do you think about that? And it's so amazing that they're little humans, like they have their own mind and like thought process and all of that. So I don't know if I gave you any pointers at all, but knowing, I think it's that real fine line, but you've got a couple of years before.
No, I appreciate that. And I know, like I said, it was out of left field, but when you were talking about that type of photographer and that, I was like, man, this is my daughter. Like, I can't decide if she would be a great client of yours or if half your job would be done already, because she'd be like, I know exactly who I am and I know exactly what I want. So, that maybe that'd be easier for you. So maybe she would be a great client for you.
Maybe. As long as she's fun and she likes to be open and curious about the world.
She is definitely all of those things.
Yeah, anytime we go into something thinking though that we know everything, I think there's such a missed opportunity. And I'm always growing, I'm always learning. I personally have my own coach. I think it's really important to have support. And also when I get in my head about things, obviously I have stories or limiting beliefs that come up and go, you're not good enough, or who are you to do this? And I need that support as well. I think everyone in business needs someone else to help them on their journey.
Yeah. And I think so often we just get we're so close to our business that it's hard for us to spot those things. And I think I told you before we started recording that right now we're on the property of a really dear friend of ours who was my mentor when we were shooting full time. And we had one of these conversations just last night. And I can't even tell you how many of these conversations we've had over the years where it's like, hey, Chris, you don't see all of these opportunities. This was literally what he was saying last night, was like, he considers his job now to walk into somebody's business and point out the incredibly obvious things to him that they could be doing, that they're just like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. That wasn't even, that's an option. Okay. Yeah. And because that's what he does now, is just full-time business coaching. So
Right.
yeah,
And we're so close and we're so emotionally invested as well. I call Camera Queens my baby. I'm like, it's my
yeah,
baby. And I
yep,
was actually having a chat with a photographer friend, and we were just talking, and she was like, when was the last time you told the audience what you do in Camera Queens, or talk about the masterclass experts that you have on, or the little, because we have, I'm probably not going to swear, but we have a, like, every Friday we have F Up Fridays. So it's
perfect.
what are all, because there's so much like learning and growth in failing, like
Oh,
failing,
absolutely. Yeah.
right? And so we celebrate our failures, and we're like,
Yep.
cool, what did you try that didn't work? Or did you forget your
Yep.
SD card and you were at the session, and what happened? And so also it's to show that you're not alone. Everyone makes mistakes. It doesn't matter how many years you've been shooting,
Yep.
things go wrong. And she was like, you don't tell your audience about that. And I was like,
Hmm.
I don't. I was like, every day we have something
Yep.
internally in our community that we talk about. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's so funny. I was like, oh, it's so obvious. She's like, you
Yeah.
got to show people what you're doing in the inside, on the
Yeah.
outside. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's the same stuff that you tell the photographers. You're like, why aren't you showing these things? And you're like, how did I miss this? How did I miss this? Yeah, you're absolutely
100%.
right. We all need that person to be able to look in from the outside and say, hey, hey, dummy, that there's this thing, this and this and this. And you can talk about all
Yes.
these things. Yeah, that's
Just
fantastic.
to go in and audit. Yeah, I love it.
Yep. Yep. Excellent. All right. If somebody wants to learn more from you, I think this is normally where I'm supposed to say, okay, how can they reach out to you? How can they, what's the, let's do this instead. What's
Yeah.
the number one thing of yours that they should consume next? If somebody's like, I like her and I wish she would have dropped the F bomb a second ago, how do I learn more? What's the number one thing they should go and check out first?
My Instagram. Yeah,
Instagram?
my
Okay.
Instagram. I chuck up some reels, have a look. I do Photo Friday every week. There's like a IGTV, so you can go in and have a look and just see some of the topics. I love talking about things that no one else talks about. So if you're into that sort of thing, let's have a chat.
Excellent. And what's the Instagram handle?
Oh, sorry,
That's
it's my
okay.
name. So it's Belle Leone. Do you want me to spell that?
Uh-huh. I'll put it in the notes as well, but yeah, I think that would be helpful. No, you know what?
B.
Hold on. I'm going to take a stab at this. BelleVerdiglione.
Woo!
Yes, I
Yeah!
did it.
Nailed it.
All right. And
Woo!
no underscores or dots or dashes or anything. All
No,
right.
if
Excellent.
yeah, because everything's linked. So my studio's linked, Camera
Perfect.
Queens is linked in my bio.
Okay.
That's
Excellent. Excellent.
the
Belle
best
Verdiglione.
thing. Yay!
Excellent. It's just fun talking to you. Even at 7 in the morning, I will give you that. Even at 7 in the morning, there are not that many people that I would say that to, honestly. Thank you for staying up on your end and working
Thank
late on your
you.
end.
Oh,
And let's do this again only when I'm back in Eastern time again.
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I love chatting. It's so good. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.